Welcome back to Route Double. We last left off. We're about ready for our nightly watch smashing.
9年前のあの日、ヒコリンの時間は止まったの。そして止めたのは
Oh fuck.
私。
Hello. Yuri stopped my time.
きっとマシロンは今でも自分をすごく責めてる。そのマシロンが危険な目に遭おうとしているのに無視するのがヒコリンなの。私を気遣うようにマシロンのことも気遣ってあげてよ。
That's
そう
fair.
しなければいつまでも時間は止まったままなんだよ。
ユーリ、何を言ってるんだ。なんか最近おかしいぞ。
そうだね。急にこんなことを言い出すなんておかしいよね。でもおかしいのは私だけじゃない。きっと全てがおかしいの。ヒコリンの見聞きしているもの全てが。
Once Yuri said that, Natsuhiko fearfully looked at his watch. Time for your nightly watch smashing. And of course it had broken before he had noticed it. Again? Upon seeing his broken watch, Natsuhiko had realized something. September 13th had long come and passed. The sliver of peace he had obtained had long since been lost. And thus Natsuhiko was torn away from his peaceful recollection and returned to reality. Mashiro, September 16th. In reality, Natsuhiko was standing in front of a collapsed emergency staircase. Beside him were an anxious Mashiro and a frightened Yuri. They had gotten separated from Salyu and were searching for an escape route. As he remembered what happened that fateful night, Natsuhiko ground his teeth. I didn't believe Mashiro at first when she told me about the terrorist plot. And this is the result of my disbelief. Ah. Natsuhiko was filled once again with regret. What I need to do first is to get Mashiro and the others out of here. Natsuhiko rushed to the stairwell and looked up. Is there any way at all to climb this thing? If I can at least get Mashiro and the others out, then... As that thought crossed his mind, a small figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Oh, Jesus!
Salyu!
Once Natsuhiko yelled, she looked down at them.
あいつらはどうなった？倒せたのか？
You don't look so hot.
ごめん、不覚を取った。
Oh, Jesus. As soon as she said that, Natsuhiko heard the sound of a drop of water dripping down. She's bleeding! A red stain formed on the floor, a stain of Salyu's blood.
サリュー、怪我してるの？
不覚を取ったって。まさか奴らに。
Had guns.
二人を倒したところで新たにもう一人現れ銃撃された。
Now that he thought about it, the enemy did show up with guns last night. Crap, it was so obvious. Why didn't I even consider that possibility? Salyu glanced at the painful-looking wound on her arm.
敵は体格、腕力に優れ、数も不明。
じゃあどうすれば？
逃げるしかない。一刻も早く遠くまで。
Right as Natsuhiko found himself at a loss for words, a voice rang out on the intercom.
地上フロアで行った点呼により、施設内の全職員の避難が確認できました。万が一職員以外の方が残っていたら、直ちに第5、第6エリア方面から脱出してください。
Assured the announcement, Salyu sighed in relief.
天下は博士も逃げた模様。あとは私たちが避難すればいいだけ。
じゃあサリュー、降りてきてくれ。一緒に逃げよう。
いや、この腕じゃここは降りられない。夏彦たちが上がってくるのも難しいと思う。まごまごしていたら敵に追いつかれる可能性もある。 だから別々に逃げよう。
I don't like that.
サリは一人で大丈夫なの？
I feel safer with you than without you.
大丈夫。でも根拠を話している時間はない。だから PC で。
Right after Salyu said that, her mental voice rang out in Natsuhiko's head. Oh! She got better. Her clear, high-speed thought process. Natsuhiko gasped as all came rushing into his head in a single instant.
サリュ
You're BC! Yuri and Mashiro looked up at Salyu in the same way.
サリュちゃん。私もだよ、サリュ。
Natsuhiko forced a smile and spoke up.
分かった。この二人のことは僕に任せろ。もう一度約束だ。全員生きて外で会おう。
必ず。
And with that, Salyu disappeared.
行こう、二人とも。サリュとの約束を守るためにも。
Mashiro and Yuri nodded meekly. Then the three of them ran off once more. The broadcast had said that the staircases in Area 5 and 6 were safe. The three of them walked through the connecting passageways towards that goal. I wonder if, once they left Area 3 and approached Area 4's outer ring... Oops! Danger! They found it wreathed in flames.
これは光、どうしよう。
Yuri and Mashiro looked at Natsuhiko with concern. Decisively, Natsuhiko answered.
突っ切っていこう。第5、第6エリアの階段もいつまでも無事とは限らない。できるだけ早くこの第4エリアを通過しなきゃ。
確かにそれに幸い通れないほどじゃないね。
ユーリは大丈夫か？いけそうか？
うん、平気だよ。
よし、それじゃ行こう。
And with that, the three of them walked into the fiery area.
煙を吸わないように姿勢を低くして袖を口に当てるんだ。
Three of them crouched down and walked on the floor. The flames flickered against the walls as the heat waves closed in on them. Eventually, Mashiro rose her voice from behind. Natsuhiko turned around in shock to see her rubbing her eyes painfully.
どうした？
煙が目に。
大丈夫。僕が手を引いてってやる。目をつむったままでいいから走れ。
分かった。
Natsuhiko took her by the hand with his right, and Mashiro gripped back firmly.
ほら、ユーリも。
Natsuhiko grabbed Yuri by the hand with his left hand, and he ran ahead, guiding the other two. And they somehow managed to slip out of Area 4. The three of them rushed into the connecting passageway to Area 5. The security gate closed behind them automatically, making sure that the flames couldn't follow.
二人とも無事か？
大丈夫。
Relieved, Natsuhiko led the two girls as they walked through the passageway. As they turned the corner... More flames! They found another fire in wait.
そんな。
通れない。
Flames in the passageway were intense. Anyone who would attempt crossing through would surely catch on fire. Crap were caught between the fires. And that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind. Mashiro groaned.
マシロ、泣いてるのか？
Yeah, we were gonna fucking die!
どうしたの？どこかやけどしたの？急にみんなに申し訳なくなっちゃう。
Mashiro muttered through her sobs.
テロの話を聞いた時はこんなことになるなんて思わなかったって。さらに怪我もさせちゃった。私たち火に挟まれて。夏彦の言うこと聞いとけばよかった。
dragged. That word shook Natsuhiko's heart.
違う。巻き込んだのは僕だ。警報が鳴った時、僕が地下に降りなければみんなを巻き込まずに済んだんだ。
Regret suddenly filled Natsuhiko's heart. He dragged those precious to him into danger once again, like he did 9 years ago. This time not just Yuri, but Mashiro and Salyu too. The headache he had forgotten came back stronger, except now it was accompanied by the pangs of guilt.
悪いのは僕だよ、マシロ。お前は何も悪くない。だから泣かないでくれ。
Mashiro wiped her tears and looked at Natsuhiko.
夏彦こそそんなこと言わないで。夏彦は戻ってくれたじゃない。昔の夏彦に。それだけでもね、私は良かった。
Her words were tinged with both gentleness and slight resignation. Intense pain ran through Natsuhiko's chest. Damn it, what do we do? Smoke was drawing near from round the corner, but he couldn't come up with their next move. That very moment, Yuri spoke up.
マシロンは間違ってるよ。
Hmm?
ユーリ。
ヒコリンはまだ戻ってない。時間は止まったままなんだよ。9年前のあの日から。
Natsuhiko couldn't believe what he saw. That was the same warning Yuri gave him on September 13th.
止まったまま。
そう。だから私はヒコリンの時間を動かすため、何度でも記憶を巻き戻すよ。その先に今日があるとしても。
Natsuhiko still couldn't quite understand what Yuri was saying. Ah, we knew she was responsible for the time shenanigans, but I do understand what's going to happen now. Something that Natsuhiko had already come to digest. Whenever Yuri says these things, that bizarre phenomenon always occurs, doesn't it? Natsuhiko looked at his watch. It had already begun to tick away at the time. Date was 9:14. Time 6:59. 2 days before this incident. Ah, I see. That was the day our daily lives came crashing down. Oh, yeah. Vision went dark. In the darkness, he heard her voice.
本当の始まりはここからなの。
Oh,
真実と
yeah.
向き合う時が来るんだよ。
Here we go.
お願いヒコリン。どうか目を背けないで。
And as Yuri appealed to him thusly, Natsuhiko's consciousness returned to September 14th. Changing mornings, Natsuhiko peacefully awoke from his sleep that day. Although this morning wasn't particularly unpleasant, he still felt somewhat depressed. The sound of rain could be heard from outside the window. It had temporarily let up last night, but appeared to have started pouring down once more. Chapter 5. Now we're getting to good. That's what I was waiting for. Natsuhiko headed to the living room to see only Yuri and nobody else. Salyu was probably still sleeping.
マシロは
来てないよ。
やっぱりか。
Mashiro would often not come to the house the day after a fight. Yuri glanced at Natsuhiko judgmentally.
そう睨むなよ。昨日のあれはどっちかっていうとマシロが悪いだろ。いきなり口頭無形な話をしといて信じてもらえないからって怒るんだからさ。
それでも信じてあげればよかったのに。
Yeah.
そんな無茶言うなよ。
She's right about that. Even if I take your side in that we shouldn't go doing reckless shit, you still should have taken her words seriously. Natsuhiko was a little dejected that even Yuri was criticizing him.
なあ、ユーリもこの町の治安の高さは知ってるだろ。テロなんて起こるわけないじゃないか。 仮に起こったとしてもどうするんだ？テロリストと単身戦うのか？
That's the part where you have made a good point.
ハリウッド映画じゃあるまいし。
そうだけど、それじゃあヒコリン後悔するかもしれないよ。
Let's give Mashiro some love.
後悔？どうして？
なんとなくそう思うだけだけど。
Yuri said no more. Rain outside sounded somehow softer than silence.
まあ、真城のことについては心配するなよ。後でちゃんとフォローしておくさ。
それならいいよ。
Once Natsuhiko gave in to the pressure and said that, Yuri smiled with her whole face. Still, what should I actually do? There's something I can do that both Mashiro and Yuri would agree with. The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, Salyu showed up in the living room.
起きたの？夏彦。
さっきね、サリは？
私も先ほど少し寝すぎた。
Salyu looked around the room and continued.
今日は真城は？
いないよ。
どうして？
そこは察してくれよ。
Salyu tilted her head in confusion.
まあ、明日には来ると思うよ。私の大切さよーくわかったでしょとか言ったりしてさ。
私はもう理解している。真城が来ないとご飯が食べられない。
ああ、悪いけど今日は貧相な朝食になるよ。
With that, Natsuhiko tossed some bread into the toaster. But still, it's been one thing or another every morning lately, huh? Wasn't like this at all just a few days ago. Today's event, Mashiro's absence, was particularly rough on Natsuhiko's heart. He honestly believed that his daily routine would continue forever, and yet... Would it really? And yet now that that question rose up inside his heart. One day my peace could end. One day I could lose those close to me. One day my precious memories could crumble. Each of those things is clearly possible. Have I just been averting my eyes from the inevitable? It was a question he had put little thought into, nonetheless tore at his heart. Wait, why am I even worrying about this? Natsuhiko shook his head as if to clear it of unnecessary thoughts. Yuri? Yuri just watched him silently. Morning bell rang as Natsuhiko and Salyu entered the classroom.
間に合ったか。
真城がいない。
あ、本当だ。
Now that he got a good look, Mashiro's seat was empty. Couldn't even see her bag nearby.
休みか。風邪でもひいたのかな。
Natsuhiko said as he sat in his seat. Eventually, Enna entered the classroom.
はーい、皆さんおはよう。それじゃ赤川くん。
はい。
猪野さん。はーい。小田くん。
And thus roll call commenced. But as she eventually got to Natsuhiko's name,
天川くん。
はい。
鳥羽さん。鳥羽さん？あれ？鳥羽さんは休み？おかしいわね。休みの連絡もらっていないのに。
It could only mean that Mashiro was in a rush and skipped school without permission. Even though she was not usually the type to be truant. Don't tell me.
ねえ、きっとこのことに気づいてるのは私たちだけだよ。だったら何としてもテロを阻止しなきゃ。
That idiot. Don't tell me she actually plans to try and stop a terrorist plot. Judging by how Mashiro was yesterday, that did indeed seem plausible. I don't know on what basis she believes there's an actual terrorist plot, but whatever it is, it's definitely not a problem that a mere high schooler can solve. In fact, Mashiro's actions could cause some sort of danger. That was the vague premonition he was getting. I guess I'll go look for her after school. Afterwards, Natsuhiko continued his classes somewhat absent-mindedly. As lunch break began, there was still no sign of Mashiro. Incident. Specialty schools like Rokumi Academy ran full-time classes every second and fourth Saturday. But to prepare for afternoon classes, Natsuhiko bought some bread and ate it in the classroom. He and Salyu spoke sparingly.
カツサンドうまい。
普通。
そうか。
Without Mashiro as their mood maker, conversation just wasn't happening between them. Never thought this would be how I'd learn how much of a blessing it was to have Mashiro around. And when that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, an announcement came streaming out of a speaker fixed to the classroom wall.
緊急放送です。先ほどこの校舎内に危険物が仕掛けられたとの通報がありました。生徒の皆様は落ち着いて教員の指導に従い、直ちに校庭に避難してください。
Natsuhiko gasped, and the whole class stirred in unrest.
危険物？マジかよ。おい、これニュースでやってた一連の騒ぎと関係あんじゃねえの？
やだ、何それ。なんでうちの学校が狙われるの？
Students' agitation created a positive feedback loop, quickly turning the classroom into a turbulent echo chamber.
危険物だって。
全校生徒を避難させなければならないということは、ガスもしくは爆弾だと思う。
Natsuhiko choked on his words. No way, you mean Mashiro was right? But when Natsuhiko considered that possibility, Anna came rushing into the classroom.
みんな、今の放送聞いたわね。
Her voice was more forceful, her expression colder than usual.
長い人生、今だけでいいから落ち着いて。まず全員、一度自分の席に着席して。
Students sat in their seats as instructed. Anna quickly scanned the classroom for empty seats.
鳥羽さん以外はみんな揃ってるわね。それじゃあ避難を始めます。出席番号順に並んで私についてきて。
Students muttered amongst themselves as they nervously stood up. At the very least, it looks like they're serious about the dangerous object. And assuming there really is a terrorist, whatever, what if Mashiro went to search for them and actually ran into them? Possible. Such a stupid coincidence could never happen. Despite his rejection of the idea, he couldn't shake off the anxiety he felt. Without thinking, Natsuhiko suddenly stopped in his tracks.
どうしたの、天川くん。避難の列に並んで。
はい。
As he answered, Natsuhiko heard a voice in his ear.
それじゃあヒコリン、後悔するかもしれないよ。
Natsuhiko gasped at those words. They were the words Yuri had said this morning. 1 second later, Natsuhiko opened his mouth.
いえ、先生。
Out came words he had never expected to say.
すみません、早退してもいいですか？
Anna and even Salyu opened their eyes in surprise.
夏彦。
何を言ってるの。いいからまず避難しましょう。
確かにそれもそうなんですが、真城の安否が気になるんです。
But something that the usual Natsuhiko would never say.
本当すみません、行きます。
ちょっと。
He heard Anna but chose to ignore her. He flew out of the classroom to find Mashiro. When he got outside, the streaks of rain had more or less abated. Thanks to that, he could search outside without needing an umbrella. The only problem was that he had no honest idea where Mashiro could be. So for now, he just took out his PDA and tried to call her, but...
くそ、繋がらない。
It was ringing, but Mashiro wouldn't pick up. Is she still mad about yesterday? He was fine with it if she wouldn't pick up. If she couldn't pick up due to injury or other danger, that would be a different story, though. Oh well, I guess I'll go look on foot. But when he made that decision, he heard Salyu's voice from behind.
夏彦、何をしようとしてるの？
え？なんだ、ついてきたのか。
夏彦が動いたから。それより、どうしておとなしく避難しないの？
決まっているさ。真城を探すんだ。
真城？なぜ？
実は昨べ、あいつがこんなことを。
Natsuhiko gave a simple explanation for what happened last night.
テロリスト、そんなことが。
まあ何かの勘違いだとは思うけど、一応ね。
でももし本当だとしたら危険なことも起こりうる。
そうか。
Actually, he didn't see. As always, he didn't quite understand her, but there was no time for discussion.
わかった。じゃあ一緒に探してくれ。
了解。真城の行く先に当ては？
ないよ。でもとにかく探さなきゃ。
With that, the two of them ran into the rain. Natsuhiko and Salyu checked the whole town. They combed through every place Mashiro was likely to go. There was no sign that they would find her.
くそ、どこにいるんだ真城は。
Did they check her house?
少し休むべき。すでに20分は走り続けている。
仕方ないか。
Natsuhiko combed through his disheveled hair and took a few deep breaths.
ったく、真城のやつ、手間かけさせて。
As he muttered that, Sally responded in a cold voice.
さっきから夏彦は悪態ばかり。そんなに言うなら探さなければいい。そもそも夏彦はテロリストの存在については真城の勘違いだと思っているんでしょ。
テロの話なんて信じちゃいないけど、それはそれとして真城は心配なんだよ。友達が急にいなくなったら心配になるのはわかるだろ。
いや、理解できない。言動と行動が矛盾している。
Eh?
真城の言葉を信じていないなら放っておけばいいのでは。
何？
夏彦の言によればテロリストなんていない。だったら
ドライだな。
But she is making a good point. Natsuhiko was a little perturbed.
サリュだって真城には結構世話になっているじゃないか。
Oh, don't be a prick.
それとこれとは別の話。合理的に判断してるだけ。
あのな、ちょっと冷たすぎじゃないか。
She's telling you how you're acting.
そんなんじゃ友達できないぞ。
Ah, come on.
な、
That was too far. Natsuhiko regretted those words as soon as they left his lips. That was essentially an outburst of anger. Salyu calmly replied.
別にいい。友達とかどうせ私には無理なこと。
よくないだろ。人間ってのは輪の中でしか生きられないって言うし。
では逆に聞く。友達ってどういうもの？
え？それはよく一緒に行動したり、あとまあ互いに楽しいとか悲しいって気持ちを分かち合ったり、そういうのだろ。
Natsuhiko gave a general answer to Salyu's blunt question.
そう。私もそう聞いた。友達ならば私にはそれを得るのは不可能。
不可能ってことないだろう。普通に考えて。
本当に無理なの。
Salyu interrupted Natsuhiko and informed him of a truth he had never heard before.
私には他人の気持ちというのが全く理解できない。
That is why she has Alice to help interpret.
脳の機能が欠落しているから。
Ah.
なんだって。
Natsuhiko unintentionally gasped.
でもサリュにだって感情はあるだろう。
それはもちろん。私にだって感情くらいはある。
じゃあそれを他人に当てはめて。
そこが無理。私は他人が感情を持っているということは理解できても、それがどう変化するのか考えることができない。それが私の欠陥。高い能力と引き換えに私が失ったもの。
Uh-huh.
私にできることは他人の言動を頭から信じるか否定するのみ。言外に含められた思いや細かいニュアンスなんて理解しようがない。そして夏彦はテロリストを信じていないという。なのに真城を探す。矛盾だから混乱しただけなのに。
Salyu hung her head as she finished. Is that even possible? Despite his doubts, he felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. I see now. That's why she treasures Alice so much. Sally said that Armed was a device meant to read the moods of others. That was why she couldn't ever be without it. If she couldn't understand other people's feelings, then she had no choice but to trust in Alice's judgment.
体質的なものなのか。
そうなんだと思う。脳も肉体の一部だから。様々な体質が存在するように、脳にも様々な得意点があるのも当然。例えば夏彦にも木や花や虫の気持ちはわからないはず。
それはまあそうだけど。
それときっと同じ。私には人の心と虫の心の違いがわからない。私の脳は他人の気持ちについて考えようとさえしてくれないの。
そんなのって。
So sad. Natsuhiko forcibly swallowed that word down. Because Salyu most likely was not seeking pity when she told him this truth. Yeah, true. But still, Natsuhiko wanted to at least say something, so he tried his best to wring some words out.
BC。
え？
そうだ。BC を使えば他人の心もわかるんじゃ。
Sure enough, Salyu supposedly had rank D aptitude. She could learn how to use empathy. It would take a considerable amount of effort, but it wouldn't be impossible. If she did, it would make living easier for her, so Natsuhiko thought.
その望みはない。私は
え？
本当は適正度 F で能力も皆無。
え？ Rank F aptitude specified that one was unable to use BC at all. In other words, no amount of effort would ever allow one to use BC.
じゃあどうして D だって。椿山先生もそう言ってたけど。
六名学園に編入するのは適正が F だとできないから、天川博士が診断書を偽造してくれたの。
Wow.
そこまでして。
Salyu nodded plainly. It's hard to believe, but judging by her expression, it didn't seem dubious at all.
本当に使えないのか。
昔は練習したこともあったけど、BC が使えれば人の気持ちもわかるかと思って。でも私には無理だった。昨日真白に教えてもらった時は久しぶりにやる気を出した。今ではもう諦めている。他人の心なんて分かりようもないと。日本に来て夏彦たちと出会い、楽しいこともあったけど混乱することも多く、時々怖くなる。やっぱり他人と触れ合うべきではなかったのかもしれない。
How exactly must that feel? To be unable to understand others no matter how much you try. To be the only one left out when everyone else around you reaches understanding of what's on each other's minds. Natsuhiko was at a loss just trying to imagine it. I see. Sally's relationship to others is like the relationship between communicators and ordinary people. Once he thought about it that way, a memory of the past arose from the back of his mind. Ugh. When he was young, Natsuhiko was the center of attention for the neighborhood kids. Back then, Natsuhiko loved BC. Without thinking too deeply about it, he yearned to be something special, which is why he dreamed of becoming a communicator. Right before he got into elementary school, he learned that he really did have the aptitude to become one for real. Thus, it was decided that he and Mashiro would enroll in Rokume Academy. It meant that eventually they had to leave all their previous friends behind. People stopped gathering in the park they always played in. The only ones to stay with Natsuhiko were Yuri and Mashiro.
あれ？今日もいない。なんでみんないなくなっちゃったんだ？
小学校に上がってもずっと友達だよって言ったのに。
Yuri spoke up after Natsuhiko and Mashiro muttered these words.
私たちがコミュニケーターでみんなが普通の人だからだよ。心を読まれると思って怖がってるのかもしれないね。
Since Yuri was 2 years their senior, she likely had a better understanding of society, particularly the social implications surrounding communicators.
何それ全然わかんないよ。
僕たちまだテレパシーも使えないのに。
He did nothing but deny Yuri's observation. It only made her smile sadly.
そうだね。だけど向こうもそう思ってくれるとは限らないんだよ。
Natsuhiko just couldn't comprehend what Yuri was implying. But he took her words and facial expressions and engraved them into his heart. It was possibly the first time Natsuhiko began to feel that he couldn't understand what was on other people's minds. He was still okay with that. He acquired the skill of empathy to read the minds of others. He would be able to understand the feelings of those who distanced themselves from him. I wonder if we're gonna get at a case where it's the opposite is the key to learning empathy. Once you learn IRL empathy, then you can pick up on BC empathy. At least that's what he had hoped. The second major turning point was the incident 9 years ago. This is the second time we've seen this. Yuri used to be calm no matter what the situation, but that all changed after the incident. Natsuhiko found himself stunned and dumbfounded when faced with Yuri's refusal to leave the house. Yuri's transfiguration made Natsuhiko sad, dejected, and regretful to the core, as well as a little frightened. Ever since then, Yuri stopped going to school and her BC ability never improved. And Natsuhiko lost the motivation to train his BC ability as well. For if one day he would become able to read Yuri's mind, and when he saw there was resentment towards him, then he... the wall we need to overcome would probably never recover. While he did want to know what was in her heart, his fear of actually knowing far outweighed his curiosity to know. So instead he swore at the very least to watch over her. Even if his oath was worth nothing more than a pittance of atonement, even if staying by her side had nothing to do with actually understanding her. Even now, Natsuhiko could not completely cast aside his fear of other people. His fear of knowing what lied in other people's minds. His fear of knowing what clouded his own mind as well. That was why he kept his distance from his classmates. How was it with Salyu? Thought back to the day she transferred in. Salyu avoided the other classmates and sat in her seat all alone. She avoided everyone in the same way that ordinary people avoid communicators. That was somehow similar to what Natsuhiko did. That's why he couldn't help but say,
他人と触れ合うべきではなかったなんて、そんなこと言うなよ。確かに他人の気持ちなんて僕らにはわからないよ。混乱することも怖くなることもある。それでも考えるべきなんじゃないのか。
Natsuhiko thought that perhaps he wasn't the most qualified of people to speak on this subject. Regardless, he continued.
今、僕は僕なりにサリュの気持ちを考えて発言したよ。それも無駄なことなのか？
それで何か分かった？私の気持ち。
わからないさ。僕はサリュじゃないからな。
そうでしょ。だったら結局それも無駄なこと。
違う。 僕やサリュに限った話じゃないんだ。誰だってそんなことわかるわけないんだよ。
私だけじゃなくて、みんな同じなの？
ああ、そうさ。だって確かに僕はサリュとは性別から能力まで何もかも違うからな。だから君の気持ちもどうしたって理解できない。それはきっと全ての人々の間に横たわる真理だ。
Natsuko could not hope to know the world as Salyu observed it, and thus neither could he hope to have complete understanding of her feelings. The same went for Yuri. And with empathy, the best he could ever hope for was a glimpse of a small facet of her mind. That's to say nothing of his fear of learning something he shouldn't. He had always thought this way, but
でも僕らはそれでも分かろうとする努力をするべきなんじゃないか？
Natsuko vocalized an idea that he himself had always been rejecting. As he vocalized it, he gradually became more and more aware of how it was an idea that he had originally always held.
他人の心が分からなくても努力し続けるのが、つまりは人を思いやるってことで、それはきっと自分のためにも他人のためにもなることでさ。そう思わなきゃ誰にも優しくなれないじゃないか。
そんなことを言われたのは初めて。
僕もこんなこと言ったのは初めてだ。
Take other people in consideration, even if you don't understand. Try.
変な人。
Well,
私は夏彦が何を考えてそんなことを言ったのか、皆目見当もつかない。
as long as you keep striving for it, as long as you keep other people in consideration. And I feel like and the sentiment's good. Still don't know how well it would apply in Salyu's case, but you take it to mean just treat people well, then okay.
ああ、それも分からなくてもいいよ。
わからなくてもいいの？
そう考えた方が気が楽だろ。
Salyu hung her head as if deep in thought. She eventually looked up and asked Natsuhiko a question.
つまり夏彦が悪態をつきながらも真白を必死で探していたのは、それが理由？
ああ、その通りさ。
Okay, I don't agree with her, but I still want to keep her in consideration. As the unexpected turn his conversation with Salyu had taken, Natsuhiko had forgotten about Mashiro for a moment.
あいつが何を考えてるのかわからないけど、会って聞こうともしなけりゃ、その気持ちに近づくことさえできないだろ。
心配するって、そういうこと？
ああ、きっとね。
そう。
Salyu nodded with that and continued.
私には相変わらずわからない。言動と行動が一致しない夏彦の気持ちは。だけど、他人の気持ちなんてどうせわからないというのは、私にとっては嬉しい言葉だった。
That you're not alone here.
少しだけ救われた。ありがとう。
Natsuhiko was startled by her honest expression of gratitude.
感謝されるほどのことじゃないさ。ただいや、なんでもない。
Natsuhiko swallowed his words. The words were, even if people can't come to an understanding, perhaps they can come to a compromise. He did not say it because he thought it might just confuse Salyu again. Then after Salyu stared blankly at Natsuhiko for a while, she suddenly glared at him as if she remembered something.
とはいえ私は夏彦も心配。
え、なんで？
不明瞭な情報を盲信する真白と、あてもないのにそれを追う夏彦は私から見れば似たり寄ったり。
まあ確かに。
闇雲に探しても見つかるわけがない。まず落ち着いて考えよう。真白を見つける方法を。私も一緒に考えるから。
なあ。
Natsuhiko replied enthusiastically to Salyu's proposition. Natsuhiko and Salyu spoke as they looked at the map posted on the bus stop.
この広い街の中からどうやって探せばいいと思う？
電話はかけたの？
かけたよ。でも出てくれないんだ。
Salyu pondered for a second before coming up with an answer.
電話がつながらないならテレパシーを使えば。あの事故現場で会った時、夏彦は強力なテレパシーを使っていた。あれならどこにいるのかわからない真白にも連絡できるのでは。
テレパシーか。
According to Akita, Natsuhiko's telepathy apparently reached as far as a kilometer away. And he knew Mashiro's characteristic brain waveform quite well after all the practice they had done. Natsuhiko had never consciously used telepathy on his own.
僕にできるか？
真白曰く、テレパシーのコツは伝えたい言葉を心の底から念じること。素人考えだけど、心底真白を心配している今ならできるのではと思う。
可能性はあるかもしれないな。よし、わかった。ちょっとやってみよ
う。Natsuhiko resolved himself and placed a finger to his temple. The same basic stance Mashiro had used to facilitate telepathy.
では私は応援する。頑張れ、夏彦。
ごめん、少し静かにしてくれ。集中する。
わかった。
Well, thanks for the encouragement, though. Salyu fell silent. Amidst the soft sound of the pouring rain, Natsuhiko concentrated with all his mind. He couldn't dare use mass, untargeted telepathy. He absolutely needed to make sure his message had directionality. First, I need to make myself keenly aware of Mashiro's characteristic brain waveform. Her waveform was type 2. Waveform associated with gentle people who try their hardest to help others. He thought of her and focused hard on the words he wanted to tell her. Mashiro, where are you? Why won't you pick up? Salyu and I are worried. Contact us if you're okay. Mentally repeated that phrase over and over, without thinking about anything else at all. Then suddenly, the surrounding sound of the rain disappeared. A second he thought the rain had stopped. Wasn't it? The rain was still falling. He merely stopped hearing the rain because his 5 senses had dampened. In place of his sense of hearing, he gained another sense. A strange 6th sense, far beyond his usual 5. But what's going on? It's like I can feel my own brain cranking. The world was full to the brim with BC particles. Natsuhiko felt as if he could sense their very movement through his brain. This is BC? Natsuhiko concentrated even further, focused on the complex, minute electrical signals that formed his desired message.
真白、今どこにいるんだ？連絡してくれ。
Message loaded onto the BC particles in his brain and were expelled out into the world.
夏彦。
Eventually, he snapped back to reality once he heard Salyu's voice.
どうかしたのか？
急に顔色が蒼白になったので驚いた。大丈夫なの？
ああ、多分。
Now that he thought about it, he remembered what Anna had said. BC use can cause the 5 senses to dampen, and in certain cases, even vital signs like body temperature and pulse can drop. Ah. That? Yeah, I forgot about that, but that certainly makes the, Natsuhiko in the core. Area N makes that interesting. That said, he hadn't heard a thing about complete hearing loss or turning pale. What if those were side effects of the extreme concentration?
まああれだけ集中していればマシロにも届くかもしれない。
I would be assuming Mashiro was currently less than a kilometer away from them. That thought in mind, they waited for a little while, but still did not receive any contact from her.
失敗したのかな。
Once that utterance eventually left his lips, an electric sound chimed from within Natsuhiko's pocket.
何？
メールだ。
Natsuhiko took out his PDA and opened his email. Display showed the following response. Subject: Holy cow! Sender: Mashiro Toba. Body: Is that your telepathy, Natsuhiko? So you really can use telepathy now, huh? Congrats! It's a little disappointing that your first use of telepathy was to send such a cut and dry, businessy message. Incidentally, I'm at the White Tiger Gate. I'll go to school once I'm done with my business, so no need to worry.
白顧問なんであいつ
Oh, that... How would you be at a place like that? Natsuhiko cocked his head after he finished reading the email.
それって何？
町の西側にある都市ゲートだよ。
Workaway City was surrounded by a fence in order to maintain public security. Obviously, there were entrances in the fence. There were 6 city gates in total, and the White Tiger Gate was one of them.
そこまでテレパシーが届いたの？
そうみたいだな。
The White Tiger Gate was about 2 kilometers away from where they were. Wow. An effective range of 2 kilometers made his latest use of telepathy even more far-reaching than what he did at the scene of the accident. It's hard to believe all of a sudden, but if Mashiro said she heard it, then it was probably true.
ではどうする？マシロは用事が終わったら学校に行くと言ってるけど。
I'm just curious about something. If we max out, does this change anything? Nope, that did nothing. If we don't... No, it didn't do anything. Alright, just
では
curious.
どうする？マシロは用事が終わったら学校に行くと言ってるけど。
いやこっちから迎えに行こう。用事ってのが何なのかも知りたいし。
了解。同行する。
It was not a distance that was impossible to run. Natsuhiko and Salyu began running toward the city gate. The city gate? It was something of an inspection booth established on the main road that connected the city to the outside world. A guard was stationed at a box nearby. All people wishing to leave or enter the city were required to go through the proper paperwork beforehand. Then, once at the gate, passage required proof of citizenship and a strict security check. Gates were thus seen as something of a status symbol befitting of a government-designated top-secret city. As they got close, Salyu muttered,
なんだか嫌な場所。
Yeah,
んそうか。
まるで市民を閉じ込めているみたい。
you're not wrong.
それは考えすぎだよ。
You're not wrong, though. The city was obviously not a prison. It was a little bit of a hassle, but normal citizens were certainly able to leave and enter the city. Gates and fence were actually a dependable blessing since they served to blockade suspicious characters from entering the city.
まあ長居するような場所でもない。さっさとマシロを探して戻ろう。
With that, they looked around and found her soon enough. She was at a bus stop near the gate, seemingly waiting for a bus. She hadn't noticed them. Rushed up to her and called out.
こら何やってんだよマシロ。学校
来たの二人とも。
来たのじゃないだろう。心配かけて。
なんだ、別に来てなんて頼んでないよ。
何？
昨日言ったでしょ。夏彦にはもう頼らないって。
Almost one lower.
テロリスト捜索の一件は俺の山だ。お前らは手出すなってなもんだよ。
Mashiro still seemed to be mad about yesterday after all. Natsuhiko didn't understand what rubbed her the wrong way, but he did know that once she got like this, it was hard to get her to stop. But still, isn't she being a little too stubborn? Probably had her own reasons for being mad. Natsuhiko laid off on that subject as he piled on the questions.
わかった。それはひとまずいいよ。確かに僕の態度も良くなかったし。でもどうしてお前自ら探してるんだ？警察か保安課に通報しろって言っただろう。
The good point he made.
したよ、もちろん。昨夜のうちに。でも警察も保安課も全く相手にしてくれなかったんだよ。
Natsuhiko thought that was the obvious response, but didn't say anything.
ではなぜ真白は一人でこんなところに？
いや、警察も保安課も頼りにならないから。仕方なく自力で6つの都市ゲートを巡ってさ。監視員さんにテロリストらしき人が侵入していないかを聞いて回ってたんだよ。
地道だな。で、成果は？
ここで6つ目だけど、素性の怪しい人は全く出入りしてないって。
だろうな。
It was unthinkable that terrorists could infiltrate the city that easily.
そういう楽観主義が一番危険なんだよ。浮田のおじさんも近頃コミュニケーターを疎ましく思う人たちがいるって言っていたでしょ。夏彦だって無関係じゃないかもしれないじゃない。
まあそれはそうだけど、おじさんの話とテロリストうんぬんって話にはだいぶ開きがあるぞ。
Mashiro fell silent in mortification. That's when Salyu cut in.
いや、確かに楽観主義は良くないかもしれない。学校に仕掛けられた危険物の一件もあるし。
危険物？それどういうこと？
ああ、いや、昼休みにこんな放送が。
As soon as Natsuhiko finished explaining what happened,
学校に爆弾が？
いや、爆弾って決まったわけじゃないって。
放送の内容からそう推測しただけ。
でもそうかもしれないじゃん。二人ともとりあえず学校に戻ろう。
言われなくても戻るつもりだっての。
and right on cue, the bus arrived. Three of them boarded and headed for school. As they rode the bus, Mashiro muttered in a stiff voice.
学校大丈夫かな？
大丈夫だってば。さすがに粉々になったりはしてないと思うぞ。
ならいいけど。
As they had that conversation, the bus dropped them off in front of school, but the grounds were awfully silent. Motion seemed to have died down already.
本当に危険物仕掛けられてたの？
少なくともそんな放送はあった。私たちも詳細は。
Sally began to speak. They heard an angry voice coming from somewhere.
ほら、あなたたち。
あ、先生。
They looked to see Anna rushing over to them.
もう勝手なことして先生心配したのよ。
すみません先生、私のせいなんです。
あら、鳥羽さん、風邪か何かじゃなかったの？
そういうわけじゃないんですが、ちょっと野暮用で。
野暮用で学校を休むんじゃありません。
はい。
Mashiro quietly bowed her head.
ところで先生、例の危険物騒ぎはどうなったんですか？
ああ、あれはデマだったみたいなのよ。
デマ？
トイレに時限爆弾のようなものが仕掛けられていたんだけど、それっぽく見えるおもちゃだったわ。
おもちゃ？どういうこと？
わからないわね。誰がやったのか知らないけど、たちの悪いいたずらかしら。
Oh yes, the time bomb toy that comes with Time Bomb Tommy.
近頃こういう事件が多いようだけど、困るわ。
Anna didn't seem to know the entire truth behind the situation either.
なるほど。それじゃあここに長居する意味はないね。
But
行こうみんな。
huh? Mashiro pulled Natsuhiko and Salyu by the arm and ran off. and is shouted in surprise from behind. Well,
ちょっとあなたたちどこに行くの？授業再開してるから出なさいってば。
すみません、野暮用です。
だから野暮用で授業を休むなって言ってるでしょ。こら！
her voice eventually faded away into the distance.
おいマシロ、何やってんだよ。
真白、腕が痛い。
Once Natsuhiko and Salyu finally complained, Mashiro stopped and answered.
構うことないよ。どうせ明日は日曜日だもん。週明けにはほとぼりも冷めてるでしょ。エナ先生、夏彦には甘いしね。
お前な。
Even if they returned to school now, they'd only make it back in time for 6th period at best anyways. And his impressions bothered him a little bit. But Natsuhiko set that aside and instead turned to Mashiro.
まあいいよ。で、僕らを引っ張っていってどうするつもりだ？
いや、そのね、もしよかったらテロリストの捜索を手伝ってほしいの。
え？
夏彦は分かってくれないみたいだけど、私は自分の住む町に危機が迫ってるかもしれないのに何もしないなんて嫌なんだよ。
でもテロリストが実在するとしても私たちの力で阻止するのは難しいのでは。
そうだね。だけどそれは無理っぽいと思ったからって何もしなくていいってことにはならないでしょ。
Salyu gasped. Perhaps she was thinking those words resembled what Natsuhiko had told her earlier. Mashiro's words made Natsuhiko reconsider his own thoughts slightly as well. His words really can't persuade her, huh? If he were to leave Mashiro as is, she would probably just start acting on her own. Even if there weren't any terrorists, Natsuhiko had to admit that he'd worry about Mashiro if he let her out of his sight. Fine, I guess I'll play along with Mashiro until she's satisfied.
わかったよ、マシロ。そんなに言うなら手伝ってやる。
本当に？
ただし、とりあえず今日だけな。それからのことは後で考えよう。
それでも十分だよ、夏彦。
Mashiro finally smiled.
サリはどうする？
私としてはテロリストの捜索などという危険なこと推奨はできない。
Smart. I approve. We're not in any way equipped to be taking on terrorists. Good. Yes, Salyu. Yes. We only have one tip today, thank goodness, but... The city gates. The 6 main roads running through Okame City from the outside are all installed with inspection gates. The 6 gates: Black Tortoise, Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Rule Gate, Research Gate. The 4 cardinal gates are all named after the 4 celestial guardians of Chinese mythology. Land incorporating all 4 guardians is said to be the ideal from a feng shui perspective. One famous city in Japan constructed with the 4 celestial guardians of the 4 cardinal points in mind is ancient Kyoto. According to the Nihon Kyoryaku, Emperor Kanmu established ancient Kyoto as the capital as he saw the land as a suitable gathering spot for people from all 4 cardinal directions. The reason Rokame City's gates include the 4 guardians is thought to be as a means to parallel Emperor Kanmu's words, as Rokame City was established as the gathering spot for communicators from all corners of the nation. That said, the almost military-grade security cameras and tall fences bordering the city today make it not the most warmly welcoming of the gathering spots. The only way to circumvent the fences would be to go through the tunnels underneath them. Even those tunnels are equipped with bulkheads, making the city something of a landlocked island. Furthermore, if the bulkheads are forced open, a system is in place to automatically alert the police and security department. Therefore, even if any intruders broke through by force, they'd be surrounded within minutes. The existence of Rokame City and other government-designated top-secret cities are not exactly hidden in the same way as Pripyat was. But at the same time, ordinary citizens are not allowed to enter or leave without considerable business. As far as ordinary citizens living on the outside are concerned, these cities might as well not exist. Yeah, that definitely gives the impression that they're more locked down than Natsuhiko seems to think. Yeah. we're getting somewhere. Even if I don't agree with Mashiro's get up and go here, I can compromise and say that it might be interesting to see if we can dig up any evidence. Although that in itself, just digging up evidence to the terrorists, might be enough to put us in serious danger too, so we'll see how that goes. Until next time, until then.